And so with stories like that, we just continued to feel his hand helping us along despite the circumstances. And that helped us feel like, you know what? We're on track. We can keep going.
We love to look at different types of missions and ministry on Missions Today. And I'm excited today specifically because, as you well know, the organization I work with is very much about integrating faith and work. And the organization we're going to be talking about today is really more than that. It's taking work around the world and using it to reach other people. And I'll let our guest today explain more, but we're thrilled to be able to welcome Luke Perkins, the president of Crossworld, to join us today on Missions Today.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you today.
I know I did a horrible job of kind of telling what you're doing, but I love the concept. Tell us more about Crossworld.
Yeah, Crossworld is in many ways a historical missions agency. We've been around since 1931, so coming up on 100 years here, not too far away. And for a lot of years, we were known as UFM, Unevangelized Fields Mission, getting our start in the Congo and in Brazil. And today we're working in almost 40 countries across the world and creeping up on 300 workers working in many places across the world. But a little bit over a decade ago, we shifted our vision. We kind of took a little evaluation of where the world is right now and where the unreached are in particular and what is going to be needed to reach them. And we shifted our vision to be focused exclusively or more exclusively on disciple making. And then that enabled us to be able to begin to engage people from what we say all professions. And so, here at Crossworld, really what we're trying to do is leverage everyday believers and deploy them to go out and make disciples among the least reached and see the church emerge from that in places where Christ isn't yet known.
I love the vision. We're going to come back to it in just a
Sure.
couple of minutes. I want to learn a little more about you, Luke, as you lead this organization. Tell us a little bit about your growing up and about how you came to faith.
Yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire. A New England guy. Go Red Sox. I left my Patriots behind when I moved to Kansas City and embraced the Chiefs, but still loved growing up in New England, growing up in a believing home, which was a great grace to have in my life. Came to Christ when I was in my third grade Sunday school class. Mrs. Seaver shared the gospel and realized, man, I think I already believe that. And along the way, we became connected with a group that was sending teams down to Haiti. And so we went down, my wife and I, we were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, just out of high school. But we went down on a team for the first time in October of 2000 and started to get connected there and went back almost every year working with the same people every year. And of course, that enabled us to begin to build a relationship with those people, and it really kind of put missions on our heart. Along the way, started to feel a call to ministry, and so went to Columbia International University, used to be known as Columbia Bible College in South Carolina. Didn't we didn't know it at the time. At the time, I say we, my wife and I, at the time we were still boyfriend and girlfriend. We went down there together. But we didn't know it at the time. But CIU is one of the greatest mission schools out there, and that the Lord really used that to just kind of weave this missions thinking into our DNA in a deeper way. When I graduated from CIU, I was kind of academically tired, we'll say it that way, and realized I needed a little bit of break before I went on to seminary. And so I was able to get connected with a group that needed an intern in Haiti for a year. And so I went down and started working with an international church there in Haiti called Quisqueya Chapel. And that year turned out to be probably one of the most pivotal years in my life. Worked alongside a guy who is still my mentor, a guy named Carl Olson, who's a missionary there, and really got exposed to kind of the broader spectrum of what the Lord is doing there. And the Lord used that to kind of narrow my focus on theological education in terms of what could be really strategic for the future in Haiti. And so left that internship, came back to the U.S. Becca and I got married, and then we moved 3 weeks later to Dallas, and I started attending Dallas Theological Seminary. And then when I graduated from Dallas, I started the path of getting connected with Crossworld, and ultimately went back to Haiti, and we've been serving there for the past almost 7 years, serving in leadership at the Evangelical Theological Seminary of Port-au-Prince, and serving as professor of leadership there, and served in that role right until I became president of Crossworld last year.
So many things I want to touch on. Thank you for sharing that, kind of getting us up to speed on where you've been and how you got to Crossworld. I want to spend a little time talking about Haiti. Anybody that has paid any attention to the news over the last couple of decades has known that Haiti has gone through all kinds of challenges, from challenges with the government to challenges with the weather,
Yeah. Yeah.
earthquakes. I mean, the list goes on and on. It seems like
Yep.
an endless stream of challenges that have faced that country. Were you there and engaged at any of those points of trouble in Haiti?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my wife and I, we had been in Haiti for the summer prior to the earthquake in 2010. We were going down there in the summers and kind of helping cover the church during that time. And of course, then the earthquake happened in January of 2010. And so I ended up pulling out of seminary for a semester and going back to help with the disaster work there, and spent about 3 months there immediately in the wake of the earthquake. And then while we were there full time with Crossworld, there were a couple natural disasters that happened. And of course, the current situation that Haiti finds itself in really has its roots in 2018. Of course, we were there through all of that. Our seminary campus is a 35-acre campus on the south side of Port-au-Prince, a place that we've operated in since 1942 in terms of the seminary there. We actually lost that campus to the gangs in 2020, in the fall of 2020. And so we navigated all of that, and there are a lot of stories I could share of what that was like. I really saw the Lord's faithfulness through all of it.
Well, let's stay there just for a moment. I want to
Sure.
talk about that because I know that when people are serving in missions, often we hear about the wonderful things that are happening, people's lives being changed, new translations of the Bible,
Sure.
villages being saved. We hear all about that kind of thing, but we don't always hear about some of the challenges. And one of the things I always pray that comes from this program is not only people being called into missions or to partner with missions, but to have a clear and realistic, authentic understanding of some of the challenges of
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're there and some of these horrible things are happening, you have to at least say, God, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this really what's supposed to be happening? Did you face any of those moments of crisis in your faith or in your service there?
Yeah, we faced a number of different really challenging situations. Probably one of the most challenging was one afternoon after class, myself and about 30 of my students, we were briefly held hostage by an armed gang outside of our campus. And thankfully that didn't last very long. It was only about 30 minutes, but it was at gunpoint, and it was all the things. And I came home, I got home that night and walked into the yard, and my wife was there, and I said, "Babe, this is probably more than you signed up for. And so if you want to go home, I'll take us home." And without hesitation, she looked at me and said, "We are home."
Mm.
And we just both had that sense through the whole thing that the Lord had called us to be where we were. We continued to see His hand of provision and protection. I tell people, in that particular story, in that hostage story, I'm not a brave guy. I'm not one of those guys. I wasn't freaked out. I felt His peace through the whole thing. We get to class the next week, and my students showed up in class, and they were all there that day. And one student said, "I feel like I learned everything I need to know about leadership by watching how that all played out." I said, "Well, I don't know what you saw, but whatever you saw was the Lord's hand caring for all of us in that situation." And so with stories like that, we just continued to feel his hand helping us along despite the circumstances. And that helped us feel like, you know what? We're on track. We can keep going.
How important was it to you in your role and in the work you were doing to have that support from your wife when you
Oh,
had that conversation?
that's the kind of question that'll choke me up. I'll try to try to maintain it. But absolutely critical. We uh, sometimes stresses like that will drive a marriage further apart. For us, it just drove us together. We continued to experience a really strong family dynamic while we were there. We had plans to be there for another 10, 15, 20 years when we got the call from Crossworld to say, "Hey, would you consider becoming president?" In fact, when we got that call, I first said no because we were just seeing the Lord's hand, both in our family and in our marriage, and then of course in the ministry. And so, yeah, absolutely critical. Absolutely critical.
I understand you have 4 kids. Were the
Yep.
kids part of your time in Haiti, and how was it trying to raise kids, if so, in that neighborhood, if you will?
Yeah, yeah, they were there the whole time. I mean, our oldest right now just turned 13. Our youngest is 5. When we landed in Haiti, they were, of course, younger. And so, we didn't try to insulate them from what was happening. We didn't try to just totally create this bubble where they were oblivious to it, but we tried to keep it at an age appropriate level. And so they were aware of what was going on. And there were times where they would hear shooting or they would smell the smoke of tires burning and those kinds of things. What we found, though, is kids really take their cues from us. And so if we're freaked out, they're going to be freaked out. If we're united and if we're experiencing the peace and joy of the Lord, then they're going to experience that too. And so it was really a positive experience for them. But it did impact us. For a lot of time, we had to be at the house, and the kids weren't as free to move around the city as it would have been in years past. And so that impacted them in various ways. It made it difficult, for example, for them to really grab onto Haitian Creole. They picked up quite a bit, but they certainly would have been stronger if they could have got out a little bit more. And that was just the season of Haiti that we were in.
Flip side of that, how have they adjusted coming back to the U.S.?
Well, I'll tell you, the U.S. has changed a lot since we left. It almost feels like we've come back to a different country. And the kids, I will say they are now at the point where they're not mad at us for pulling them out of Haiti. They loved it there. Their friends were there. The life was different, the weather was different, the food was different. But they've adjusted well here. We're still living on the campus, or we're living on the campus here at Crossworld right now as we get adjusted. And so they've been able to jump in as we have different missionaries coming through and MKs come through, and they've been able to connect with them. And they love volunteering in the kitchen when we have events here. And so things like that have really helped them settle in. Here in the past couple months, we got them involved in sports here. So now we're kind of feeling a little bit more like Americans. And my son got his first touchdown in flag football this
Hey,
weekend. So
that's
we were
great.
celebrating that together. So yeah, they're doing pretty well.
That's good. That's good. Well, let's talk for a few minutes about Crossworld. I mentioned as we began, I work with the organization that actually supports this program, Resource Global. We train leaders in different countries, businessmen and women, young businessmen and women, how to mature in their faith and to integrate their faith into their work. But I was really captured by your vision, this all careers, one mission. Talk a little more about what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah. Our mission statement says that we're a community of disciple makers from all professions, bringing God's love to life among the least reached. And as we look at the world today, the idea of being able to go somewhere on a missionary visa is an idea that is almost gone at this point. Most of the world is closed to official quote unquote missions work. At the same time, God created work. Work is good. Work is fundamentally good. It's a great way to glorify Him. We're called to glorify Him in all that we do, and certainly work is part of that. And so, as we think through that, we thought, man, could we leverage the whole body of Christ and deploy them out to the places that we can't send typical missionaries, guys like me with a Bible college degree and a seminary degree? Could we maybe leverage them to help get out and get after the work of finishing up the Great Commission? And so we've been at that now for over a decade, and it's been really beautiful to see not only the doors of access that we've been able to have that way, but also the impact. One of the things we talk about internally here, in missions, we talk about the 1040 window. Here we like to talk about the 9 to 5 window. And I can tell you a story about, one of my favorite guys right now. He's serving in Japan, very unreached place. And when you talk with him, say, okay, what's the Lord doing right now? He starts talking about his cubicle mates in the high rise that he's working with in Tokyo. What a great place to get connected, get enmeshed in the community. We have folks doing traditional church planting work in that place as well. But what gets me excited is the guys who are connected there in the workplace, working with colleagues, woven into that everyday life. Um, it's tremendously impactful. And so we've been able to do that in a number of places across the world, places that I can talk about and places that I can't talk about. And when we think about the places that I can't talk about, um, we've found that their identity in that place is a lot um, less questioned because they're actually a contributing member of that society. They're helping generate income. They're providing value. At the same time, they're being salt and light where life is actually happening. And it's been beautiful to see some of the results of that.
Talk about some of the careers, just maybe off the top of your head, that might be represented in these folks that are serving around the world.
Oh yeah, I mean, right now, just a couple I could mention. Of course, teachers teaching English remains to be a great opportunity in a lot of different places across the world. Not just teaching English, but teaching in general. Engineers, physicians. We have a physician who is just about to deploy to a very unreached place. They've got a contract at a hospital there, and that person doesn't need to raise any support. They're getting paid a salary as a physician, but they're being deployed as a disciple maker. So any number, really, when we say all professions, we mean it. I'm waiting for the day when I can deploy our first plumber to someplace in the world where there's a need.
Talk for a moment about the things you've seen change since the mission shifted. Obviously, you said, things have changed in the world, things have changed in the workplace, things have changed with governments around the world. What have you seen change with Crossworld since redirecting that mission?
Yeah, well, of course, it's out of the box. It remains, at the time when we first launched this vision, a lot of folks said that we were cutting edge, and we had this kind of cutting edge feeling to us. Now we're at the point where, man, we're comfortable deploying what we would call a marketplace worker. We're comfortable wading into the different kinds of visa processes that'll be involved with that. So doing something outside of a typical religious worker visa or tourist visa or something like that. We're also comfortable now integrating a marketplace worker into the family of Crossworld, where we still have a lot of traditional workers. We're definitely open to that too in the places across the world where we can deploy traditional workers. And so, if I were to take you to one of our regional conferences where we gather folks from the field together, you're going to see people doing traditional church planting work. You might see a Bible translator. You would see a computer coder, writing code in his cubicle. And to see those different kinds of people come into fellowship together, share burdens together, grow in disciple making together. It's really beautiful. But getting to that place didn't happen overnight. We were a traditional missions agency for most of our history. And so it's probably taken us the full decade plus to get to the point where we're comfortable having all those different kinds of groups as part of the same family. So now we have a beautiful dynamic here, and like I said, we're comfortable deploying just about anybody anywhere.
In our final moments here, I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe your vision for the next few years for Cross World, and maybe how our folks listening or watching today could pray for you and your team.
Yeah. Well, one of the challenges that we see, and this is a challenge that as I talk to my colleagues and other peer missions agencies, this is something that we're all feeling, and that is that it's getting more and more difficult to mobilize North Americans to go. And when I think about that, I think, it's not that the Lord is sitting there and he's frustrated and worried and thinking, how am I going to get more North Americans out there so we can get the work done? But when I think about that question, I think, man, I don't want to see North Americans miss out on participating in what God is doing as he's reconciling the world to himself. And so a big prayer request for us is that the Lord would give us the wisdom to know how to communicate what he's doing across the world, how to encourage people best to get connected with what he's doing, and to help, the average Joe, the average Jane sitting in the pew to begin to see themselves as players in the Great Commission. A lot of times we've typically gone to business people, for example, and said, hey, the mission is super important. Will you pay? Will you send your money? And what we want to say is the mission is super important. Would you be willing to play? Would you be willing to leverage the skills and the experience that God has given you to help bring the gospel to the least reached? And so we're talking right now. We haven't launched this yet, but we're setting a pretty gutsy goal for the next several years in terms of how many people we would like to deploy out to the least reached. And it's the kind of goal where, man, we need the Lord's help. We need the Lord's help. We need his wisdom. We need him to call more people to go. And the exciting thing is that as we talk to candidates and people who are engaging with us, the same God who called people 50 years ago to go to Haiti is the same God who's calling people today in 2024 to engage the least reached.
If people are listening today and they're in a career and they are kind of sparked by this idea of being disciple makers outside of North America, how can they learn more about what you're doing?
Well, the best thing to do would be to head over to our website, crossworld.org. We've got all kinds of places there where you can click a button and ask to connect with us. We've got missions coaches who work with us who would love to just sit down and talk with you and explore what it might look like for you to take a couple steps forward in that journey. You don't have to have it all figured out right out the get-go. We'd love to walk you through that process and just explore what it might look like.
We'll have a link to Cross World on our website as well. We'll direct you there from all of our program notes. Well, Luke, it's great to learn more about you and about Cross World. I thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and blessings on all your work. And we'll ask our people to be praying for you and your team as well, that God will enable you to continue to do the things he's called you to do, and specifically in the area of disciple making and finding more people from North America to fill the shoes that need to be filled. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and thanks for your time today.
Amen. Thanks, brother. Great to be here.